On January 20th, 2025, we lost one of the greatest players to ever pick up the instrument, the amazing John Sykes. Now, whether you know him from his early days in Tygers of Pan Tang or Thin Lizzy, or from his amazing work with Whitesnake and Blue Murder, I think we can all agree that we're extremely lucky to have walked the earth at the same time as such an incredible guitar player. And in today's video, I'm going to tell you guys about some of the things that he taught me along the way throughout his amazing career. Hey there kids, it's your good buddy, Uncle Ben. So last week I was playing a big ass rock gig on the high seas as a part of Shiprocked 2025, and I was having a blast until I heard the news that we had just lost John Sykes to a battle with cancer. Now, whenever I got the news, I was of course extremely sad because John has been one of my favorite guitar players basically as long as I've been playing guitar. But I also knew that as soon as I got home, I had to do whatever I could to pay some kind of tribute to the guy and maybe introduce you guys to some of the awesome things that he has influenced me with and the things that I've taken from his playing throughout his amazing career. Now, obviously, John was an absolutely insane shredder when it came to the solos, but especially his rhythm playing is what has influenced me more than anything. Some of his chord moves, some of his picking tricks, all those awesome slides and all that. I've ripped off so much of them, mainly from listening to the legendary Whitesnake self-titled album, which was introduced to me by my good buddy Eric Reason. Eric was one of the first really intense guitar players that I met back in the day. He was an early kind of guitar guru of mine. I don't think he even knows what a huge influence he was on me back then. And he introduced me to that record as well as John's other band, Blue Murder, and I've been a fan ever since. Now, I've got several different John Sykes videos here on my channel breaking down some of the signature sounds. I'm going to be reiterating some of that stuff, but I figure it's worth talking about because I know a lot of people are trying to find out about this guy since they heard about his death and all the amazing players that he influenced along the way. So on today's video, I'm going to show you guys some of my favorite things that I've taken from his playing, and hopefully you guys can start using those in your own playing today and keep the legacy of John's amazing playing alive. Now, as always, today's video is brought to you guys by everybody who supports my channel over on my Patreon page at patreon.com/BenEllerGuitars. Sign up today for all kinds of bonus goodies, backing tracks, downloadable tabs, and so much more. This week, everybody who supports my channel, even for just $1 a month, is going to get a very special ad-free and extended cut of this video with even more information in it. So don't delay, sign up today. Patreon.com/BenEllerGuitars. Gear-wise for today's video, I had to break out my precious Gibson Les Paul Custom in honor of John, and I'm playing that through my Marshall JCM800 with the Legendary Tones Hot Mod dual tube thingamajig there in the back. I'm boosting that with the Digitech Bad Monkey, and I'm running into the UA aux. Now let's get into it. Throughout this video, I'm mainly going to be focusing on the Whitesnake self-titled album because that was a record that made such a big influence on me, but I recommend checking out as much of John's stuff as you can, including those Blue Murder records. They are absolutely insanely great. If you like the self-titled Whitesnake album, you're going to love them. It feels like a natural extension of that album. So be sure to check those out, especially the first one. Now, the first thing that I learned from John is to put a little bit of sass onto everything that you play, because this is something that I love about John's rhythm playing. It's never just like a straightforward thing where he hits a power chord and sits there, or plays a note and just lets it hang. He's always injecting some personality into every single note that he plays. Let's take, for example, like that first badass riff that you hear in Crying in the Rain. It's got everything that you want on there. You got the pinch harmonics, you got the strong vibrato on that descending line. It just makes it sound infinitely more interesting than if you were to play that same riff with none of those eyebrows attached to it. You know what I mean? Frank Zappa had this expression back in the day. He'd say, put the eyebrows on it. And I think that really makes sense when you look at a riff like this. Because check it out. If you were to play that riff the way that many of us mere mortals would do it and not put all that character on it, listen how less cool it sounds. It's still a cool riff, but it's got about as much expression as your stepmom after she had her recent Botox injections. It doesn't have any of the character that it has whenever you add in all that stuff that Sykes put all over it. The shake, the vibrato, all that stuff. It's almost ridiculously over the top at times whenever he shakes those notes, you know? But that's what makes it so cool. He's putting taste all over everything that he does and putting a little bit of himself into every note that he played. Speaking of pinch harmonics, I've heard Zakk Wylde himself say that there would be no Zakk Wylde if not for John Sykes. So, there you go. You know, another thing I took from John's playing is his love of just injecting those big-ass slides up and down the neck wherever he gets the chance to. Now, you can hear David Gilmour do a bend, and you instantly know who you're listening to, right? You can hear YOLO Milkshake do a sweep, and you know who you're listening to. I think John Sykes is one of the only guys out there that you can tell it's him just by the way he slides up and down the neck. I feel like I'm close-ish, but it sounds like John's neck was always like 900 feet long. It sounded like he never ran out of frets. And he'd kind of typically do like two little muted strokes on the bottom, and then really violently slide that hand up and down the neck, kind of focusing on mostly the low strings. He'd get a little bit of note in there. You know, you can hear that note kind of descending as he goes down the neck. But I don't know, he just had a way of making it sound so cool. And it was almost like a nervous tick or something. He would do that before he started a riff. You know, or even in the middle of a riff. It was like a compulsion. The power of the slide compelled him, and so it does compel me as well. So try adding in some big-ass Sykes slides into your playing. Put a little taste on it. If I needed to pick one song to tell somebody everything they needed to know about John's playing, it might be Bad Boys. That song has so much cool stuff in it, so many of his signature tricks. Obviously, the big slide thing we mentioned is in there, but there's a few other things that are lifted from that song that will stick with me forever. There's this big emphasis on 16th notes in John's rhythm playing. He just pedals with a 1-enda, 2-enda, 3-enda, 4-enda all the time in his playing, in that song and in many others. I'll play that verse part of that song and check out how many times you'll hear those 16s fly by. Even that walk up, you know, again, there's that flavor component I'm talking about. So many other players would have played, just walked it up, you know? But John's always got to take it a step further and add in those 16s in there. You can hear that in Black-Hearted Woman. I played that earlier too. That's off that first Blue Murder record. Especially the pre-chorus. Just always tossing in those vicious 16s. You can tell he's picking really hard and really aggressively here too. I kind of see this as the natural evolution of kind of the Randy Rhoads thing. You know, think about like the Crazy Train verse, right? It's got those pedal tone 16s in it too on the A string. But if this is John playing it, it'd be more like... It's something familiar, but just presented more intensely, faster, more aggressively by using those 16th note, palm muted pedal tones all throughout his riffs. It's definitely something I learned from listening to John's playing. You know, another thing I learned from John is to mix up that chord vocabulary. You heard this cool sounding kind of C Lydian voicing there in that Bad Boys verse, right? I've got like a C, F sharp, G, D, and E, which sounds out as root, sharp 11, 5th, 9th, and 3rd, respectively. This kind of C chord, I just call the John Sykes C, because he used it all the time. If he's playing a song in the key of E minor or G major, he's probably going to voice that C major chord like that instead. Oh, I forgot to mention, I'm tuned down a half step, so take that into account. But anyway, John liked to mix up those chord voicings. You'll hear that same chord in Is This Love as well. Such a cool sounding voicing and more interesting than your stock C major or C power chord voicings that a lot of other rock players of that time would use. John liked to add in something a little bit extra into his chord work. And I think that's so cool because especially for a guy playing, you know, a Les Paul with a ton of distortion through those like Marshall or mostly Mesa amps that he was playing back in the day, he would really expand those chords a lot. Still of the Night had a lot of this in there too. I've got a whole video about Still of the Night here on the channel. Be sure to check that out. But one example I see of that is, you know, in the chorus of that song, it always ends with that big F chord, but it's not just an F chord. See, a lot of players just play that as a power chord, but it's actually got the open G in there, which against that F sounds out as the German interval, the 9, and it's got a really cool kind of open, airy sound to it. Listen to it again, and now that you know to listen for that, I guarantee you'll hear it every time. Even at the end of the song, he uses that a bunch. So I love that John was always mixing up his chord voicings, not just playing standard power chords like everybody else, but instead spicing it up, putting something a little extra in there for his signature sound. We talked about 16th notes, we talked about Bad Boys. This seems like the perfect time to talk about John's double picking technique, which is something I think I heard from him first, but then later heard from Jakey Lee and Mastodon and a lot of my favorite stuff. You heard it there in that pre-chorus part. See, again, that's just a cool way to put some extra attention to detail into a riff. He could have just played it like a typical, you know, blues boogie kind of thing. Because that's really all that it is, I think. I swear I'm not playing that note for note. Don't take my word that that's exactly what he's doing. But what he's outlining there is just a basic kind of B boogie blues thing. But instead of just picking every note one time, he's using that double picking technique and going into 16th note mode again. So every one of those is getting 2 pick strokes. Makes it twice as nice as just picking every note one time, right? I've got a couple videos about double picking here on my channel. Be sure to check those out. because John does it all the time in his playing. That's a great example because it's so fast and mean sounding. To get the double picking thing going, you have to have a downward pick slanting kind of orientation with your picking. Check out Troy Grady's amazing Cracking the Code series for all the details on downward pick slanting. And John would use that double picking thing all over his playing, even for just little fills and stuff. That's in the pre-chorus of Crying in the Rain too. Check this part out. Sounds so cool, man. I think he does that in Straight from the Heart as well. Tons of songs on the record feature that double picking thing. John's chord vocabulary and knowledge of inversions was also great. You could see how I was playing those dyads here, well, not dyads, or full triads, on the D, G, and B strings in that section of Still of the Night. I remember these being really confusing back in the day to learn. They just kind of seemed like random shapes and bars thrown around. But in reality, these are just miniature versions of chords that you probably already know. Some of you guys might be like caged players using that cage system, you know, to devise and understand your chord shapes and all that. I think with a lot of these, you can just look at them as being parts of bar chords that you probably already know. Like, for example, this voicing. Now, this is a little stair-step shape that John uses in that section. That might just seem like a random group of notes to some of you guys, but if you look at it as being part of this D bar chord, 12, 11, 10, that's hidden right there inside your D bar chord, you might realize like, oh, I'm just taking that chord and leaving the bass notes and the top note off and playing this little cluster of notes. This guy right here is an A shape. John uses that shape a lot. In the cage system, that would relate to a C shape, kind of shaped like your regular open position C chord. But again, that's such a cooler way to play an A than that is. Sometimes those big old bar chords that you learned from your buddy Mel Bay sound like shit in context if it's being played with a big, steady bass line. Sometimes you need to stay out of the way, and that's where learning those chord inversions, like John do, really comes in handy. So as you learn those chord shapes that John was using, be sure to not just learn them as random, patterns like stair step, one finger, spoon shape, whatever it is you want to call it. Learn them for what they are, whether you see them as parts of other bar chords that you know, part of the cage system, recognizing the notes in the triad as belonging to some other chord that you already know. Whatever system you're using, be sure to analyze and learn exactly what it is that you're doing. Still the Night is seriously an encyclopedia of everything awesome about John's guitar playing. That example right there is something I learned a really valuable chord move from. You'll see I took that D power chord, and then I played this lick. Then I played the C power chord, and this lick. It's the same lick, just in a different position. This is a really cool move that John did all over his playing. It's not just in that section of Still of the Night. It's all over that record and his other stuff too. I think it must be a Hendrix move. Might be a Gary Moore move for all that I know too. But I know I heard it first from Hendrix. What you're doing there is you're taking what is an ambiguous power chord, because power chords are just roots and fifth. It doesn't sound happy like a major chord or sad like a minor chord. It just sounds like rock, right? But by playing this lick, where we take a look at the root note, move up a step with our third finger here, and then slide up a step, that is assigning a third onto that sound. 1, 2, 3, like we'd have in the major scale. It really flavors that D power chord into now sounding like a happy D major chord. Same goes for the C. That now sounds like C major. So by playing a power chord and then a lick that implies that it's major, it's like you get all the thunderous clarity of the big ass rock power chord while also putting some taste on it and giving it the melodic content of a full major chord. That's a great little trick that I learned from John's playing. I use it all the time. Probably too much. I reckon playing all these hot licks sure has gotten this room toasty. I'm looking a little warm on camera here. Might need to have a beer about it and cool off. So there you go, guys. That's a handful of sick rhythm guitar tricks that I learned from the legendary John Sykes. Gone way too soon. Cancer sucks, but I love that he left behind such an amazing legacy of influence, killer riffs, insane solos, and a hell of a fashion sense too. Be sure to let me know in the comments section what he's taught you as a guitar player and name your favorite John Sykes tune. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and a massive thanks to John Sykes for being one of the greatest players of all time and inspiring myself and Kirk Hammett and Zach Wilde and so many other players to become more better shredders. If you guys liked what you saw today and want to help support my channel, be sure to check out that Patreon page over at patreon.com/BenEllerGuitars. All kinds of good stuff is waiting for you, even for just $1 a month. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell for notifications every time I upload a new slice of fried gold. And be sure to tune in next week for some more wicked guitar stuff coming at you. Now get away from the computer, grab your guitar, and start doing some riffing. Less clicking, more picking.